Hello good people and welcome back. If and when I'd like to study amazing, dynamic, tactical chess, I look at Grandmaster Hikaru's games. Not a Twitch and not his 3-minute format where he crushes the souls of lesser grandmasters. Why is that? Because watching Hikaru's games online makes you think you can easily play at that level. That's 10,000 hours of practice. Inversely, when I look at them, I think to myself that level of chess insanity makes me feel that the quality of my games might not get to that level ever, which is a bad thing because you want to improve, right? So instead, I study and break down his classical games, combine it with my studies, and voila, hopefully we get a rating boost. Let's get to it. So this game took place at the Torneo Continental Americano in 2003 when Hikaru is only 15 years old. White is played by Gennady Sagalchik and black is played by Hikaru Nakamura, none other than himself, of course. Oh, before I forget, if you do like this content, please leave a like and subscribe. You have my gratitude. Let's get started. White starts with the d4. Queen's pawn, knight to f6, the Indian defense, knight to c3. Are we pre-Londoning here? What's going on? Hikaru takes the middle immediately. Bishop to g5. Now e6. Trying to develop the bishop there. Opponent hits the center, trying to pin here. Bishop to b4. And in this position, knight to e2 was played. Mind you, if the opponent decides to push e5, let's check our tactics here. It's not doomed or doom and gloom because you can counter hit that. That's kind of things you learn as to not how to lose your pieces for a counterattack. And after that, it becomes completely wild and the reverse Uno card is played because now, even though black kind of destroyed or rather pushed the pawns in front of his king, there is a counterplay here for black and the opponent probably wanted to avoid that. So after bishop to b4, white simply played knight to e2. Now here, d takes on e4, a3. Hikaru shuffles back, takes by the opponent, and here, primarily, Hikaru doesn't take with this bishop. And that's what they usually teach you in basic chess principles for pawn structure. Don't ruin your pawn structure, especially in front of your king. Hikaru takes with g takes on f6. And that's the first thing I want to talk about. Kind of a nice thing to look at this game. Hikaru breaks the rule, but with the exception that if you're doubling your pawns, there has to be compensation. He does not want the bishop to be attacked. So after the opponent takes, he simply asks it to go away. He takes over the square partially because it's also occupied by the knight. Then he plays on the light squares on e4 and on d5. Opponent fianqueros, now b6. It looks like a dubious move, but it's not. He's going to try to compensate and hit d5 a couple times. Bishop to g2, bishop to b7, queen to d3, and then knight to d7. Possible maneuvers in these squares. Knight to d1 was played, and here queen to c7, preparing a long castle. c4 by the opponent, trying to attack d5 as well, and castle by Hikaru. The opponent shuffles just a bit, knight to e3, and Hikaru prepares a preparatory move, trying to get his king out of the C file there. Queen to c2. A bit of shuffling by the opponent. And here, bishop to d6. I'm going to point out that the opponent, it doesn't look like the opponent has a very solid plan. Whereas Hikaru, my voice cracked there, Hikaru here is preparing something against this pawn structure. So the opponent is avoiding the idea of a push here and then reacting here, hence fracturing the structure. So Hikaru creates this idea and forces the opponent to play f4 immediately. And that's the thing about pawns. When you push it, you can't go back. You can maneuver your knights, you can maneuver your bishops, every other minor and major piece, but the pawns tend to lock up the position and dictate how the position will be played. And here, Hikaru plays h5, which should destroy your opponent's pawn structure, if and when you can. and that should be the plan. At least in this position, Hikaru looks like he has a worse off pawn structure, but it's restricting the middle. And in this case, pushing the h-pawn just means more targets here, but also if takes, the rook can take, and you've got a fractured structure, which works mainly for you. Here the opponent plays h4. Again, reacts to Hikaru's h5, which means we have a very weak pawn here. Maybe that's a bit extreme. That's a weak pawn. That's a target. And mind you, Hikaru knows that. He plays knight to f6, now maneuvering the knight. These squares, where the pawns have been pushed, are light squares that belong to white. And that's the other thing I want to talk about that I'm getting from this game. And you'll actually see it in many classical games, in many highly positional games. As aggressive as this game will get, Hikaru follows the principle of maneuvering, looking for outposts. But I want you to look at this now weak square. All right, opponent finally castles, and c5 by Hikaru. Now he pushes and opens up. d5 by the opponent. Rook 8, h to e8. Mind you, if for a second e takes on d5, knight takes, bishop takes, that dilutes the position. You have a bishop here, but more importantly, that's reducing the tension in the position. If you reduce the tension, it simplifies, the potential for both sides decreases, and hence Hikaru does not do any of those things. He knows that. He's a grandmaster. Knight to c3 was played, rerouting, hitting d5 quite a bit at times, but Hikaru just calmly plays a6. I don't know how calmly he played that, what he looked like at the time, but he played a6, prophylaxis, basically. Rook 2. Now, reshuffle. Bishop to g8. All the forces are busy in the center, but this is still a weak pawn. And like I said, once you push the pawn, it can never be retracted. That's just, I hope you guys know that it's not a secret, but that's many ways how Magnus actually beats many grandmasters, is that forcing them to push a pawn when they probably should not, because you can't, there's no undo button. Any case, opponent defends that way, and here Hikaru sacrifices the rook. Because after takes, you can see light squared or dark squared attack. After takes, takes with check. Which leads me to another point. You should sacrifice, if you want to, for compensation. In this case, I think Hikaru would see that the best breakthrough is breaking through with his rook. And here Hikaru is threatening here, but doesn't take. Instead, avoids trade. So the rook is hit. Centralizes again. It's easy to see that if you do take that, what Hikaru wants is to centralize the bishop. Knight to a4. And then king just moves up. Rook to b3, trying to break through. And here, again, just defense. Defense. Bishop to f3. Hikaru takes the open file. Lets him have it. Now e takes d. And here, b5 was played. Trying to just boot that thing. That thing being the knight. Now, mind you, according to the Silicon Monster, this position is still fairly even. There's play on both sides. Black has the bishop pair. White has a passer there. And, yeah, there's two rooks for white there. But knight to c3 was played. And here, Hikaru bullies that rook c4. And if you can look at this position, because of this pawn chain, this rook is not really trapped, but it has to move somewhere, and it can't move outside of the third rank now because of the knight move, because of Hikaru's clever defense there. So here white tries an attack that would work on maybe lesser mortals. Rook to b5, and the thing is, if you take, which Hikaru is not, he is not a noob, you get royal forked. Hikaru decides, of course, after that sacrifice, well, why would I take your rook when I can take its defender? And the position falls apart for the opponent. In this position, it's hard to see where the opponent really went wrong, other than a few maneuvering mistakes and a lot of pressure put by Hikaru. Hikaru plays so confidently. The opponent looks like they're hesitating. And in this position, the opponent pushed here. And simply, queen to c3 could have been taken. And after that, of course, in this structure, and in this position, black is up material, so black is winning. But white here tries to experiment with d6, trying to hit the queen first. Probably open up some lines there. Queen took. This is still hanging, because now Hikaru is calculating with the idea here, with potentials in the back rank. White tries to save material. And that's you know, when you're up material, the psychology is you want to hold on to the initiative. But if you can't see it, the evaluation goes sky high, because I know how the game will end, and the game ends in a complete explosion. First with rook to g1, d2, and the last point I'd like to talk about is you should, if and when you can, always improve your tactics, because in this position, Hikaru sacrificed the queen, and the opponent resigned. Hikaru calculated that because of this pawn and the control here, if you take the queen that way, that is a checkmate. If you take the queen here, that is a checkmate. The opponent actually resigned prior, like I said, and it is ultra impressive how Hikaru first sacrificed here, but also played to the opponent's kind of weakness, and most people's weaknesses, is that you want to maintain the initiative by keeping your pieces. And he tried to save the rook. So Gennady gets immortalized in this game by the 15-year-old. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Quick recap: d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, d5. Activate with a pin. Takes. Moves back, takes. Breaks the rule of not doubling your pawns for compensation. And here, takes the center, all the light squares. Fianchetto, overprotects. Knight 2, develops. Now, the threat of ruining the structure. This is now a weakness. Hikaru creates that, and boom. So this is still a weakness. Prophylaxis. Sacrifices the rook. Squared strength. Doesn't take. Recentralize. And here, Hikaru cramps the position. Asks this rook, where do you want to go? Not there. This would have been fine, actually. After takes, a desperado attempt to get out of the way leads to back rank check, and then sacrificing the queen. Brilliant stuff. Hopefully we gathered something from there. I'm definitely going to have to look at this game again. But yeah, just the principles that Hikaru applied. Of course you need top of the line forced calculation, but you guys will get there, hopefully. Double peace.